This episode of the National Squash League podcast is brought to you by Dakota. Like the National Squash League, Dakota moves fast. Built in Philadelphia, driven by precision, and focused on performance at the highest level. Dakota is a financial, software, data, and media company powering the global investment ecosystem. Their flagship platform, Dakota Marketplace, helps teams raise capital, source deals, track peers, and access comprehensive data all in one place. Just as the NSL connects elite players, teams, and fans to grow the game, Dakota connects the people and information that move markets forward. Since 2006, Dakota's mission has been simple: help others get what they want out of life. And they're changing the game by putting service first. Learn more at dakota.com. On today's National Squash League podcast, we have a jam-packed episode. We first start with an interview that Spencer Lovejoy and I did with founder and CEO of Dakota, our new presenting sponsor, Gui Costin. After that, Spencer and I break down the NSL Draft. We break down the offseason of the NSL and all the things that are happening. We preview the season and tell you who our champions are. I will say on the women's side, we agree. On the men's sides, we vehemently disagree. And then after that, we get into an interview with three-time world champion, now member of the Atlanta Tornadoes, Nick Matthew, to talk about his journey on the NSL and preview the opening match, Atlanta Tornadoes versus the Philadelphia Lightning, Friday, January 30th. So without further ado, let's go. We now welcome on to the National Squash League podcast, live from the Dakota studio in Philadelphia. He is the founder and president of Dakota, and he is now the new main presenting sponsor of the National Squash League. We have Gui Costin on the podcast today. Gui, welcome.
Pete, thanks for having me.
Now, Gui, I've been super excited to announce this partnership to the world, and obviously we've known each other for many years now. But why don't you tell our audience, a little bit about yourself, how you came about finding Dakota, and just your background, I guess.
Sure. So there's it's kind of an old joke now with my kids, and they asked me in the Christmas of last Christmas, "Hey, Dad, how many jobs did you have before you started Dakota in '06?" And I was like, 8. And my son Will goes, "Count them all." And I said, he goes, "That's 11. And they said, "Do it one more time." We got to 13. So Dakota came about in 2006. I worked at a firm in Phoenix. I wanted to launch a product. The CEO wanted to do it. I presented to the executive committee in the spring of '06. Not only did they say no, then they fired me. So 90-day severance. And so I found the group that we were going to do this fund of funds with, and we launched Dakota in the fall of '06. But to kind of the bigger point, and really where I think it ties in with you guys, it's the NSL, is that I really had a vision for a long, long time, but I didn't know how it was ever going to play out. Could I create a business, considering I had 13 jobs? Could I create a company where you could put people in and slot them in a role and have them stay for a very, very long period of time and build a really prosperous career? And so we're in the fundraising business for investment firms, and in 2019, we got into the database business. The data business, so we supply data on LPs to investment firms so they can raise capital. So if every CRM is out of date, we supply an up-to-date, accurate CRM for investment firms.
And are most of your clients, on the East Coast, West Coast, all over the country?
Every city around the country, around the world. Really, at the end of the day, we have 1,300 investment firms, and they're domiciled. It's a global database. It's a global business. And again, why it ties in so well with you guys in squash is that every single city that you're going to play matches in, we have customers in and clients.
Yeah, well, it's awesome to hear a little bit of the history behind the business, and curious to know kind of what was that problem that you were trying to solve with Dakota when you founded the business and you created this ecosystem.
So I wish I really knew. It was a little bit to starting off. It was just being very entrepreneurial with no grand plan. It's just been walking in the dark ever since. 20 years of walking in the dark. So we always solved a problem for investment firms. Fundraising is very, very hard. I wrote a book on it called The Dakota Way, which is the 4 core principles of investment sales, which, by the way, anyone listening, I'll send a signed copy. Just send me an email to Gui@dakota.com, and I'll send a signed copy. It's a great book because it just kind of breaks down in increments the process, right? But it's very hard because there's a lot of rejection and super long sales cycles. So our theory was, hey, if we could provide an outsourced solution that was proven to an investment firm, and we don't do it for everybody, so we have very long-term relationships. So we're solving a problem, a very difficult sales process. And we use a sales process to solve that difficult problem. That's one. And then 2, there's a big data issue in our industry. Most industries have huge data issues. Data is growing like crazy. People change jobs, 25% turnover a year. Right. If you can provide an accurate and up-to-date CRM for people, they don't have to lift a finger. They just pay us to do it. That's solving a ginormous problem.
And you sort of touched on how your business changed, especially in 2019 when you got in the data business. Do you find that your typical client, obviously investment firms were probably your primary customer, do you feel like it's changed since then, or have you just sort of differentiated what you offer now to your clients?
So that's a huge strategy question. I mean, so I know exactly what you're asking.
Yeah.
Right now, that business selling LP data to fundraisers, that's like a 2,000-pound boulder running down a hill, right, for our 35-person sales team. Like we can't get out of their way. And we really haven't had the ability until today to unbundle the product. So just think we have all these data sets under one umbrella that we don't discount. Now we can take data sets out and deliver them a really high quality product if they just want one component. So, hey, I only call in family offices. I can give you that product for a different price point. Hey, we only want to call RIAs. We only want private market data, right, on private funds or hedge funds, what have you. Now we can slice that out, give that to you. So now for the first time, I'm not kidding, it's like January of 26, we now have the ability to unbundle and tap into other end markets beyond just a fundraiser.
I mean, that's an incredible asset for obviously a lot of companies out there that will be looking to work with Dakota. So for listeners who are asset managers or investors in the space, what's kind of the best way for them to engage with Dakota, find you, online or whatnot?
Yeah, so Dakota.com, we have an extensive library. I mean, I think we have 750 pages on our website of information as it relates to data and everything around how we could be useful to them, both in their fundraising efforts, their deal sourcing efforts. So Dakota.com really is the best way, or just reach out to me, Gui at Dakota.com.
Now, taking it to squash and the Dakota and National Squash League partnership, I'm curious, but I didn't know that fact about you, Arizona, and that's where you were. How did you personally get involved with squash, in the first place?
So I've been involved in squash for a very, very long period of time, mainly because one, my college roommate Ed Garno was, phenomenal. He took, it's amazing what he was able to accomplish.
But he was a punter, wasn't he?
He was a punter at UVA, and then he became the squash player. So I watched it there, and then all of a sudden, in fourth grade, my daughter got very involved. And she did the whole Agnes Irwin Squash Nationals. So we did all of the squash with Kate. And then she ended up going to F&M and played college squash. And then we were lucky enough to be asked to sponsor or donate one of the courts, if you will. So we did the women's squash court at the Spectre Center.
Got it.
So really, I mean, it's really been through Kate is how we've lived it, if you will. Nice. And then, of course, Squash Smarts has been one of our really big charitable organizations that we support, and we're such a big believer in what that organization is doing for kids. It's unbelievable, and I think there's such a nice through line to squash. As you said, it's a lifetime sport. It's a best shape you have to be in to play squash, as Ed Garner found out this past weekend, even after playing a lot of padel. So there were, and it really is our demographic. It really represents the demographic that we sell to and interact with, and especially since we're in cities all across the country, it's a natural.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's such a tight-knit community, the squash world, and obviously, as you mentioned, getting into squash through one of your roommates in college, someone who BG also knows. Chances are, if you know someone in the squash world, you know someone else. So it's a great community. It's something that BG and I have obviously both been part of for the majority of our lives. And so when you first heard about the NSL, what were your initial takes on it?
There's somebody years ago that called me up and said, hey, would you have an interest in buying a team, being part of an ownership of the team? So I first learned about it then, and then just meeting, Beach when we played golf, which is very interesting. He said, hey, he was telling me about the story. It sounded very interesting. We did a follow-up call, and he's like, look, we're looking for a title sponsor. And if you really look at what we do, right, for a living, it just aligned so perfectly around Dakota Cocktails. And then also just namely wanting to be able to support you guys and help you get a league off the ground, which is not easy. And we have a really big social media presence. So our ability to also be helpful to you guys to build the brand, build awareness. I love the fact that we're going to host pop-up shop Dakota Cocktails at the events and do wine and cheese and expose everyone to great squash and a great atmosphere.
Yeah, so now I have to ask, of all the cities, you can't say Philadelphia because you're from here, which city are you most excited about, in the National Squash League, of the teams, which city are you most excited to host Dakota Cocktails in?
Well, there's no doubt the Grand Central,
yeah,
right? And then Greenwich that we just know so well. I mean, I think those are going to be real hits. I think the thing that we're going to run into is, because we're going to have to limit, the number of guests that we can invite, unfortunately, just because of size constraints and stuff. Yeah. But, and just watching it evolve, I mean, I think we'll be in Grand Central. Yep. With the Dakota brand associated with you guys, which is really exciting. Greenwich is very exciting. But then literally all the other cities too. I mean, we're so familiar with those cities. We've done so many events in each one of them it'll be like old home week.
Yeah, we'll have to get you a Philadelphia Lightning jersey at some point for sure with Dakota logo front and center, maybe your last name on the back or something like that. So
now, are all the matches going to be played in the glass court?
So
Inspector?
In Philadelphia, the Philadelphia Lightning's home arena and the Philadelphia Freedom, the women's team, is at the Spectre Center. So both the matches will be there. At our other locations, we have a wide variety of different arenas. We have a lot of glass courts that our teams utilize. Some of them are more traditional clubs at this point, but the long-term vision of the league is to get all the teams playing on, big arenas, big glass courts, hopefully eventually having their own facilities, just like other professional sports teams do.
I love it.
So yeah, I mean, obviously you spoke about, the Dakota cocktails and how that, really aligns well with the NSL and the way that the league is structured. Are there any other things that excite you about the NSL on top of the Dakota cocktails?
Yeah, I mean, I think the number one thing is what I'd be able to share with you guys, as I was kind of saying when we were speaking, is our history and the learnings around social media marketing and how you do that. We've learned a lot, and just because we're partners now, I think we could be very helpful in basically sharing with you all the things that we've done, because you do become a media business, and that's what we've seen through the impressions on both LinkedIn and Instagram, pictures and video drive reviews, if you will, and interest. Plain old boring language or selling a product, whatever, gets like zero. Right. But if you share a picture, you share a cool story, you share a thoughtful story, that's really what wins the day. And so hopefully we can be additive to you, not at no additional cost, just because of all the resources that we have and what we've been able to do to help you guys, launch into the world.
For sure, I think you make a great point there, and I think that you guys obviously have such a great understanding of the media side of investing, of business, of marketing, and the league. We're obviously very, very excited to work with Dakota on that, and hopefully can also tell the story of Dakota through our partnership as we go along too.
Yeah, and I have to. This is the final question because I know we're a bit on a time crunch here. I'm sitting with two co-founders, co-founder here. I'm a big fan of business, big fan of sports business in particular. I would love to hear from you, Gui, sort of any parallels that, in your journey of founding Dakota, and then, Spencer, especially, maybe you could talk to about your journey and, finding the National Squash League, and, the parallels, I'm sure there's more than come to mind for me at least.
So on October 30th of last year, I was invited to go down to UVA, and there was 3 data people. There's this one guy, Mike Chin, who sold his business to S&P Global. He lives in Charlottesville, and he went to UVA. He's like, hey, would you come down and be one of 3 panelists and talk to 45 seniors, UVA parlance, they call them 4th years, and essentially talk them off the ledge about not going to business school, but still wanted to be in business. So the dean of the college was the moderator. So she goes, okay, second question. Gui, I'll start with you. She goes, what did you learn at UVA in college that you apply every day in business? And I looked at her and I said, Dean, you're not going to want to know this answer. She goes, no, go.
Learned it all at the fraternity.
Yes. I said, I learned how to throw fraternity parties. And so the place that comes down and goes crazy and everything. And I said, no, I actually talk about it every day to the team. Because I say, if you can throw a fraternity party, you can run a business. And if you just think about all the elements to throwing a fraternity party, right? You have to pick the venue, you got to get the band, you have to have the guest list, you got to get the food, you have to get the booze. Everything has to be organized, right? You have to coordinate everything, right? It's the exact same thing. And then there really is no grand plan. Like I've said, for Dakota, there was no grand plan. I just knew once we started, one foot in front of the other, you listen to your customers, they give you feedback, you hopefully deliver for them, and that just becomes the service component. So really, at the end of the day, if you're a person of service, right, to both your employees should be first, I think, and then your customer second. Because if you take care of your employees in a great way, they'll take care of the customers, is my philosophy, and it's a lot of people's philosophy. To being of service, that's the greatest joy in life, of getting up every morning and knowing you can do things to serve other people, so they can get what I would consider to be the most out of life.
Yeah, I mean, it's super interesting that you say that, just based on your background, your experience with Dakota, because I feel similarly in that, obviously if you can handle the load of putting on these big events, doing, handling a lot of details at the same time, you're capable to do a lot with your business, because obviously businesses they involve a lot of moving parts. They involve managing a lot of things at the right time, and if you can do that effectively and put the right people in the right places, then there's a high chance that you're going to succeed. And so, I mean, to speak from my own experience, with no formal schooling in business at all, being a professional squash player for the last 5 years and now taking over the National Squash League, I've learned a lot about obviously being organized, knowing who's supposed to be in the right place at the right time, and being able to manage all the moving parts of the business are really just massive assets, massive skills, and they'll take you a long way. Even if you don't have that, the vision too clear cut at the start, if you keep going along, it becomes clear. So
yeah, that's great. Well, congrats on what you guys have created.
Well, Gui, thank you again for coming on the podcast today. We can't wait for this partnership. We can't wait for this season, and we can't wait to have more Dakota cocktails all across the country with the National Squash League.
Love it. Well, thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Gui.
Thanks.
Welcome to the National Squash League podcast presented by Dakota, live from Dakota Studios in beautiful Philadelphia. And today's a special episode because we welcome live now for the first time CEO and co-founder of the National Squash League, live in the flesh. We have Spencer Lovejoy now on the first episode live. Spencer, welcome.
Thank you, BG. Thanks for the intro, and really excited to be here as the co-host of the podcast this season to obviously talk about league changes, the state of the league as we go through the season here, and also talk about the exciting matches that we have in store for the season.
Now, I have to add, as part of the agreement of getting Spencer on the podcast, he is supposed to, as CEO, be unbiased, no hot takes, be not emotional. So if that's what you guys are expecting, that's not going to happen. I will be doing the emotional takes. I will make the hot takes, but Spencer has to be unbiased because it's part of the job as CEO.
I've got to maintain my professionality as CEO, so I'm going to try my best to be as objective as possible here.
Perfect. All right. So before we dive into the draft that just happened this past weekend in Cleveland, I sort of thought this was a good opportunity to give a State of the Union of the NSL, and you did a good job also in Cleveland, sort of giving that. But for those that didn't tune into the draft, sort of the first question is, what were the rule changes that the NSL implemented this offseason?
Definitely, yeah. There were a lot of different rule changes, from the actual format to regulations around the teams, things that owners were able to do with their players and whatnot. And so to start off, this year, owners are actually allowed to give player bonuses after each match to their players based on their performance during the match. That was something that we didn't do last year. Last year, players were just paid their match salary for the weekend, and there were no incentives, but now there will be incentives to perform well, give your all on court, win the match, obviously, as well as do all the off-court activities that are very important to these weekends, such as, sponsor clinics, VIP events, dinners, and all that fun stuff that the owners are doing with the players this year.
Perfect. And then there's a period. The power play in the third is now two minutes, not a 1 minute and a 2 minute, right?
Yeah. So to go into the rule changes for the actual format, so we have an extra substitution now in the third period. So rather than 3 substitutions, which was what the rule was last year, we now have 4 substitutions in the third period. A lot of changes in the third period, as the third period is kind of the precipice of the match. So we felt we needed to spice it up a little bit and give the teams a little bit more flexibility to change their rosters in that third period. Another rule change is that we are elongating that second power play, which was 1 minute last year, to 2 minutes now. So every power play will now be 2 minutes long, and there will be 2 2-minute power plays in the third period. So a little bit extra time for attacking and exciting rallies to happen in that third period and for momentum to switch.
Yeah, I remember a lot of players last year. The third period's long. It's 30 minutes, and especially because the NSL format, it's tough. It's like, they're moving at a faster pace, and so I always joke, 8 minutes in the NSL is much other than 8 minutes on the PSA. So I think that's going to be welcomed by the players. Now, how about, for you, is short term, I guess, what are the goals of the NSL this season?
This season, our real biggest goals are to run a fun, competitive, and engaging season for obviously players and fans on both sides. Getting all the players to their locations, making sure they're taken care of in the cities, and making sure we're putting on a great show at every match. Another big goal of ours is to tell the story of the NSL through our media and to the masses. Obviously through the live streams by running great, live streams with, exciting on-screen graphics, commentary, statistics, as well as through social media, telling the story of the league as it unfolds. Because as you know, obviously these matches can, they can flip on a dime, and things can change very quickly in the NSL. So we want to show that it's an electric league, it's engaging, it's and it's something that people should tune in for this season, because there's going to be some exciting squash.
Well, it's crazy. I still think about our New York match last year, and we went down 2-0, and I was like, all right, like I guess this is it. Tough start for a new team, and thankfully won that third period and then won the shootout. And if we don't win that first match, we probably don't make the playoffs, and we don't win. And that's the beauty of the NSL. And what we're trying is, sometimes when you watch the PSA, it's pretty predictable. It's pretty chalk. Top 4 seeds usually always make the semifinals. This year's actually been a little different, but that's a whole separate discussion. And anything could happen in the NSL. And we have plenty of matches. We got a preview, actually. But I want to dive into the draft now. And so we were in Cleveland, Ohio, hosted by Lake Erie. It was, in conjunction with the Squash in the Land, which was a great tournament that Paul Cole ended up winning over Leonel Cardenas, member of the Louisville Colts. I had a blast. I always have a blast at the draft. It was well run. The other thing I want to hear you talk about, because people don't see it, like the behind the scenes. For you as CEO, and again, we're startups, so I saw you working, putting up tables, doing all this stuff. How much work and coordination went into organizing that draft?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question, and honestly, something that was really challenging. And I don't think people understand. People who haven't run events maybe don't understand the amount of moving parts that go into running a really successful event. Obviously for production on the live stream as well as in-house, it adds an extra fold into the entire run of show. And I mean, this role specifically is one that you have to wear so many different hats in order to do successfully. So, I mean, it's something that's personally been really fun for me to get to learn a lot of different skills. I mean, I've learned event planning, I've learned business, negotiation, sales, promotion, social media, marketing. I've done a little bit of everything, and this weekend was really a challenge because for those who didn't tune in for the draft, it was at a medical facility, so already like a very interesting venue for something like a draft.
Right.
It was at a medical institute in conjunction with another squash tournament that was already happening at the same time. So the challenges were trying to figure out how to set up our draft space in a moving in the lobby of this medical institute with moving parts of the tournament. That basically the tournament, they were ticketing people through the space where we were meant to do the draft. So we turned up on Friday evening, and their ticket booth is set up like in the direct middle of like where they're telling us like, oh yeah, this is where you're gonna do the draft tomorrow, by the way. Our production team turns up, like they're pissed off at me because they're trying to do testing, and Squash TV is set up with their streaming, and the matches are live, so they can't do the testing because it would take too much bandwidth from the internet. So we had to shut that down. We were trying to at least do it what we could the day before, plan out the schematic of how the draft would look, and eventually we basically just had to chalk it and then come back early in the next morning. And that morning I had to beg the people at the tournament to let me just move the ticketing booth basically up to the front of the building so that we could actually start setting up. Yeah, we had to start moving on this because it was like, the draft was at 8 p.m. Our production team needed to test the audio, needed to test the cameras, get the angles right. We need to figure out exactly where the tables were going to be so our owners were taken care of.
And the last semi ended at like 7 or 7:30, right?
Exactly. So there would have been very, very little amount of time to actually set this up. So I had to beg them to move their setup so that we could start. And Celia, shout out to Celia, was big MVP
Amen.
That weekend. She helped me move all the furniture. I mean, there was heavy furniture, and we had no help. It was me and Celia, essentially, just moving all of the furniture out of this lobby. And we have like a fun time lapse we did of it, actually.
I did see that.
We have a time lapse of it. Maybe we'll put it in the podcast. But
yeah.
We moved all the furniture, moved all the rental stuff over big, massive 8-foot tables, projector screen, lectern, backdrops, curtains, like all that stuff. And we transformed the space in like about 3 hours. And by the later in the day, we got everything in place for the
And
draft.
I have to add, I was going to be there Friday and I was going to help, but I got snowed out, so I couldn't be there Friday. And then I had to take care of my kids Saturday. And so while I did want to help and be there with you and Celia, I had to get my beauty rest before the draft. So I took a little nap. I'm sorry, but I want to make sure people know that I don't look bad. I wanted to be helpful.
Of course, man. Priorities. We know where your priorities lie. So it's no harm done. We pulled it off. If we hadn't pulled it off, I probably would have been kicking you for it. But because you said you were going to be there. But
I did.
Next year.
Well, God bless you and Celia. And Ashby I saw after. I mean, I think.
Oh, for sure. Ashby. Big shout out to Ashby. He's the COO at the NSL, doing a lot of operations stuff, and he's responsible for so many details that I can't keep track of. So.
Right. And Home Team Network, I think, did a great job producing it. And shout out to Sean and Bill Buckingham. I think we got out unscathed without any drama from the commentators. I don't think there was any Anything bad
Maybe
said?
maybe a couple things from Wild Bill there, but you know, we'll let the fans find those out on their own as they go through the recordings.
Yeah, and there's a couple picks that are very funny and very relevant. So it's a good segue. We'll see what I get into. Let's start with the women's draft first. And also, for those that didn't watch, what I actually thought was brilliant, I don't know if this was your call or whose call it was to run the women's and the men's draft side by side. So we started with the women's first pick, and then the men's first pick went side by side the entire time. I was nervous at first, but it was so smooth. It was brilliant. I think it was very entertaining. No other leagues really do that. But I think it's best for us to just break down the women's draft first.
Yeah, that was actually Ryan Leslie's idea.
No
to
way.
give him credit
Leslie.
For it. Yeah,
Shout out to Ryan Leslie, too.
Yeah,
I forgot about
Leslie's
him.
got a great vision for these types of events. He loves drafts. And you know, in our first run of show meeting, we obviously had the run of show men's, women's draft separate. And he was like, guys, what if we just combine them?
Brilliant.
And I was like, honestly, that's a great idea because, you know, when the women's draft is going on, the men's teams are just kind of like waiting around, like not that relevant for them. And then vice versa. So it's like, why don't we just, you know, given that we have the men's and women's league so closely intertwined, why don't we just intertwine the drafts? And it turned out really, really entertaining. So.
Shout out Leslie. That was great. So we're going women's draft first. I have my own personal power rankings. I don't know if you did that, but I guess for you as the CEO, I'll get into the hot takes. But you as the CEO, what were your comments, thoughts on the women's draft?
Yeah. So obviously we had the two expansion teams coming in this year, the Seattle Freeze and the New York Queens. So they had a fresh board to fill, and it was cool to see them both, you know, super jacked up about the draft and excited to be there. And you know, there were definitely some some nerves and reservations from both sides. I know in the lead up, obviously having been new to the NSL and not exactly knowing how things work, there was a bit of uncertainty around some of the players that were, you know, potentially going to be drafted to their teams with their availability and things. So, you know, at the league, we tried our best to, you know, obviously make as many players available as possible for the match dates so that the owners could make very easy decisions on draft day as to who they would draft. So yeah, but I mean, in terms of looking at the rosters, for me, there's three teams that stand out on paper, and my top three are the Freedom, the Inferno, and the Freeze. Ooh. I think that those three teams definitely stand out. Siva Sangari was a great pick from the Freedom. I don't know how she fell so low, but I mean, amazing second round pick. Freedom having two top 10 players on their team, only team that has two top 10 players on their team. And then the Inferno, very, very solid lineup with Amanda, Jazz, Rachel, and then Rowan El Arabi obviously getting in the mix too. She's been nursing an injury, but as long as she's healthy, they'll have a great squad. And then the Freeze with Tina Gillis and Nada Abbas, a really strong top two players. So I think those three teams are the ones that stand out for me.
So for the statistics nerds out there like me, for the top three players across these three teams, these are the top three, right, based on their top threes average, if that makes any sense. The Freedom's average ranking, right, with Olivia Weaver, Siva Sangari, and Melissa Alves, they have an average of 9.67, which is crazy. The next highest, DC Inferno, with Amanda Sobey, Jasmine Hutton, and Rowan El Arabi. Actually, I think it was Rachel Arnold, because Rowan, I think, has fallen out of that top 20.
She may have because of the injury. But she was obviously a top 10 player less than a year ago, so you can kind of give her maybe the benefit of the doubt on that.
But they're at 14.33, and then Seattle Freeze, to your point, they're 18.67. If I was really good, I would have had the New York Queens number as well. But my top three were Freedom, DC Inferno, and New York Queens. And the only reason why I put the New York Queens ahead of Seattle is because of Noran Gohar. And, you know, this is a whole thing. The fact that we have Noran Gohar and Mustafa Asal in this league at all is just amazing. And I can't wait to see how Noran gets involved. You know, the first match for New York, I believe, is January 31st when they're playing DC Inferno. So
yeah, January 31st. It's right after your match on opening day, which we'll obviously talk about. But really excited. I'll be at that match in New York, helping run that one. And yeah, really, I mean, open squash, great venue. Right. New York's inaugural match, so going to be interesting to see how that pans out. And with Noran on their side, it's going to be very interesting to see how she takes to the format tactically. She actually called me a few weeks ago to ask, you know, about the format and about, you know, how it works and everything. So she's doing her research on the format and the ins and outs of it, and really trying to bring the Queens to victory. So.
Well, she was also at the Philadelphia Lightning and Greenwich Panthers match last year. Bill Buckingham was commentating it, and you could see everyone's interested, everyone's fascinated. Actually, even this past weekend, Paul Cole, when we ran the NSL Draft exhibition, he was talking to some of the owners, fascinated by what's going on in the format. And again, when you have a competitor like Gohar, and obviously she's off the tour, she's pregnant, her kid is due, I think, in April. Her competitive spirit's got to be taken to this. And I think she must have had a hand in the draft. I think she hand-selected a lot of these picks, a lot of Egyptian, players on this team. I really think New York Queens will be good, but this DC Inferno team. So here's the other thing I want to talk about. I sort of gave one word to describe every team, and you as CEO, you can either react or you can choose not to react. But this is based on my power ranking. So Freedom, champions. Especially when you have now Siva, 2 top 6 players, and if they're playing in full, I mean that team's unbelievable. DC Inferno, revenge, and I'm not gonna lie, DC was really pissed about last year. Everyone knows that, and the best part of this draft is that Rona Larabi, was on the Philadelphia Freedom. No one knows what happened. She got injured. The communication kind of died down. Sunil and the Freedom dropped her. And I was sitting with Sunil, and when the DC Inferno pick came up, he's like, they're going to take her. They're totally going to take her. And I was like, in my mind, I was like, for the league, for the entertainment value, I was praying that DC would take her. Sure enough, Rowan goes to DC. I mean, that team, they have 4 perennial top 20 players between Amanda, Jazz, Rowan, and Rachel in their lineup. Marie Stefan, winner from our Penn days, and they got Lisa Aiken back. I think they dropped her in the 3rd round, got her back in the 6th round. I mean, DC had a phenomenal draft, but revenge is definitely the word I would use to describe them. New York Queens, just a little punny and obvious, but royalty. I see Noran Gohar as the number 1. The Queens, their team, I do, like you said, they have great draft picks. For Seattle, I put Stormy. Sono, I put consistent. People forget Sono was the only undefeated team last year in the women's side. I don't think they dropped many. They picked up Amina El Riani, which was good, and Kira Marshall. So I think that team is pretty steady and consistent. Lake Erie is the bottom of my power rankings, and I put them as vanilla. And you're not allowed to say too much about that, but I thought their team, when you look at it top to bottom, all great players. I have a lot of respect for these players, but there's somebody, Gina is the number 1, could have that it factor. We, sad to miss her in the playoffs last year, but I really need to see a lot of these guys if I'm going to feel differently about them.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not going to comment too strongly on those adjectives, but yeah, I mean, I think the Freedom is in a great spot at the top there, and I was looking at that Rowan El Arabi pick and looking at Sunil and could tell he was thinking about that one as maybe you shouldn't have dropped her, but right. It is what it is, and that's sports. So
and the last thing I want to say about the women's draft is I was actually a little surprised Fairuz went first. I don't know if it was scheduled. She's obviously had a great season already. She's won a couple. I think she's definitely gotten a couple big wins. I forget how much she's won this year, like tournaments, if she's gone all the way through. But I was kind of curious about the recruiting process for her, how it worked out. Do you reach out to her? She reach out to you? And again, I don't know where she's based out of, but that was sort of when I saw her go first. I was like, oh, maybe that's a non-influential pick.
Yeah, I'm actually not really too sure about that one. I was a bit surprised. I thought New York would take Siva first overall, yep. And they took Fairuz. So it could be maybe a Norton Gohar influence. It could be maybe an open squash relationship. Open squash, the host of the New York Queens and the New York Knights, they do a lot of sponsorships with players as well. So, right. And I know that they have ties with, for example, Farida Mohammed, who actually had to drop out of the draft last minute because of a shoulder injury. But I know that a lot of players have ties with open squash, so it could have been something like that. But yeah,
interesting. And again, I'm very excited that she's in the pool. I think this woman, again, I wouldn't be shocked if Lake Erie shocks me, but you got to have a take, you got to have an opinion. But that New York Queens team is gonna be scary.
Definitely.
Now let's turn to the men's draft. And again, I will obviously be biased. You will have to try not to be biased and give your honest opinion. But what were sort of the best storylines, best draft picks, or even best teams that stood out to you?
Yeah, so I mean, firstly, I just want to start out by saying there are so many good teams in the men's draft this year, and this is going to be by far our most competitive season on the men's side. And I mean, just from the league side, I know that we are going to have to be on top of these matches, like on the rules, on making sure all the players understand what's going on, fair play and all of the repercussions for time wasting, etc. Because this is going to be a very competitive men's season. First team that stands out, Chicago. Similar to last year, really, really strong roster on paper. Gawad, Mazen Hisham, Sam Todd. They have so much firepower in terms of attacking ability. And I think that, as long as their team management is good and they get the players together meshing well, they're going to be able to put a lot of points on the board. One thing I do worry about is them potentially being hot and cold, because those players, there's a high risk there's high reward, but there's also high risk with some of them.
What was the word you used to describe them? Fiery? Is that what you said for Chicago?
I
thought you were making a Simon Herbert joke.
Potentially, yeah. Yeah, but I mean, they have so much firepower. I mean, that's a good way to describe them. But they have so much firepower. But yeah, again, potentially high risk, high reward team. So if they play well, amazing. If there's an off day, you could be in trouble there. With no immediate anchor player to really steady off the roster
in Chicago. Yeah, that's fine. For my team that I was most fascinated with, and it might be because we're playing them Friday, January 30th in Atlanta, NSL opener. Tune into the live stream on YouTube. But Atlanta Tornadoes. They kept Miguel Rodriguez with their first round pick. They take Nick Matthew with their second round pick, and take Omar Masad with the third round pick. The average age of those three is about 39 years. Two are retired players. Miguel is I don't know how he's still moving. I mean, he's still playing on this PSA. He's still winning left and right. He's an unbelievable person. So I say this with all due respect to this Atlanta Tornadoes team. Like I did with the women, I'm just going to jump into my word that I describe teams with. Atlanta has to be geriatric. There's just no way to describe these teams. It's unbelievable the amount of, the age of these players. They're great athletes, don't get me wrong. And Omar just retired, so it's a little recent. But geriatric is the word. I think Atlanta Tornadoes, if they were really smart, they'd call Life Alert right now, get a New Jersey sponsor, have these three talking about it, and maybe that's their demographic. I mean, they've been around the game for a very, very long time.
All right, well, we're gonna have to do some research after this and see if we can get Life Alert as the next sponsor for our Atlanta Tornadoes. But you're certainly right. Their average age is much higher than other teams on the board. But with age comes experience, of course. We know that. And I personally think that this team has a very good mix of skill sets. They have obviously Miguel, who is, able to last, eat up the minutes. They have Nick Matthew, very experienced, the closer. He knows what to do in what moment on the court.
Very smart. I'll give him that.
And then they have Mossad, the Hammer of Thor, who's their attacking power play guy. So they do have, despite the, higher average age, they do have, those attributes that contribute to a good team. It's just going to come down to, how well those players are managed, because as you go deep into the third period, as we saw in your opening day match last year with Simon Herbert gassing out in the third period, that could be an issue for Atlanta.
Well, but that's where the substitution that you talked about earlier does matter. And I got to make sure that everyone on the Atlanta side knows that, because I think that 4 substitution rule is going to be critical for them and their survival.
Definitely going to be critical how they manage their substitution. So
Now let's talk about the draft day trade. And I'm not going to lie, I was a little upset that I didn't get into the action on the draft day trade. Matthias Knudsen traded from Louisville to Newport. It was a scheduling issue for the second round pick. With that pick, Newport, I forget who they took. I have it here. Louisville. Louisville used it to take Mohamed El Shabaghi. So great pick, great trade. But talk about the details of that trade from your perspective, how it went through. And
so this was cool because, and it's cool for me to get to talk about it too, because this is obviously something that happened behind the scenes the day before the draft. Like there were so many, like I told you before, there were so many moving parts with the draft.
Totally.
The last thing I needed was another thing to do on draft day while I was traveling to Cleveland, without Wi-Fi. So essentially how this went down was Ramit became unavailable to play the season. So therefore we allowed Newport to pick back up their second round pick. And then at the same time, Matthias Knudsen became unavailable to play Louisville's matches, but still wanted to obviously play in the NSL. So we were trying to figure out how to facilitate a trade for Matthias, and he was available for both of the Newport matches. So great to try to facilitate that. So essentially what happened was, Newport got their second round pick. Matthias became unavailable for Louisville. So it was a straight trade of a second round pick for Matthias Knudsen going to Newport, and he's going to be a very reliable player for Newport this season, with his ability to play all their matches and bring his skill set to Newport.
Yeah, and I want to bring up Newport too, because with their first round pick, they took NSL co-founder, world ranked number 26, I think he is, and the USA number 1, Timmy Brownell. But I did say on the last podcast, Timmy, I think I had him in my mock draft with Sean going to Chicago because he's a great Scottie Pippen. This is said with all the utmost respect to Timmy. But when I look at the team of Timmy Brownell, Matthias Knudsen, and Yaya El-Aswani, who was great in the playoffs last year, great player, I actually have them, and I'll go through my power rankings later, but I have them actually second to last I'm not sure how this team of Timmy, Matthias, and Yaya is going to perform compared to, like you said, this is the deepest the NSL men's side has ever been. It's going to be super competitive, but I actually have them ranked second to last.
That's an interesting one because I have a very contrasting opinion to that.
Really?
And I want to talk about Newport too because I think it's a very, very interesting roster
Okay.
in terms of the way it's coming together.
Okay.
So
fire away.
So yeah, I mean, I think the Dragons have a great team this year. I think
Okay.
that as their team leader, Timmy is, obviously one of the co-founders of the NSL, knows the format so well. He's playing probably the best squash that he's played in his career.
True.
Now at 25 in the world.
Yeah.
Him and Matthias, very close friends, work very well together
Yeah.
in terms of
Both
their
based in Philly.
synergy. Both, Matthias, one of the best power play players in the NSL, able to put up big points.
True.
Same thing with Finley Withington, one of the best power play players in the NSL.
I hold that against them. Two big power play players could be tough.
For sure. That might cause a clash of personalities. You're right. So, maybe I'm wrong here, but then having El Nawasani as their engine and their player who can eat up minutes, be physical on court, team captain Pat Kosker is going to have to make some hard decisions here, actually, with their lineup because, Brownell, obviously the steady team leader, either Knudsen or Withington on the power play, and then Nawasani is your engine. But, that leaves either Knudsen or Withington on the bench.
Well, we're not even talking about, and I wrote this in my notes. The only reason why the Newport wasn't dead last was because of their 6th-round pick, Auguste Dusord, world number 31. And he's, France, fiery. He is somebody, as everyone always describes, he gets in people's heads so easily. And we haven't even talked about him. Him on this team, it bumped him up one spot.
He could also bring a very good physicality that the team needs.
Right.
So... There's been so many question marks with Auguste over the last couple of years with injury.
Totally.
He's had knee injury, out of the PSA season for a long time. So, so many question marks as to whether he will turn up and perform or whether he will have another, injury riddled second half of the season here.
Okay, so who are your top 3 personal rankings
So,
on the men's side?
I think divisional winners.
Okay, division winners
will be. Or do we want to do predictions now or power rankings?
Power rankings.
Okay.
And we'll do predictions
I didn't
later.
do power rankings, but
Okay.
I can
do your 3 division winners.
Yeah.
We'll say that's your top 3.
So my division winners: Lightning, Colts, Dragons. Division winners.
Wow. Okay.
And my wild card team is the Panthers.
Wild card team is the Panthers. Okay. So those are your top. Let's call them your top 4. Okay.
Yep.
Now for the statistics, like I said, the top 3 players on every team, the average based on their PSA rankings. First is Greenwich at 13, and tied for second is Grizzlies at 15 with the Lightning at 15. Now, for my personal power rankings, you got to have the Lightning number 1. They're undefeated, best coach in the league, ownership group I love. You got to have them undefeated. And here I'm going to say the words too. My second best team, you said Louisville, right?
Yeah.
I have Louisville as my number 2. Lionel Cardenas saw him play at Squash in the Land. He was unbelievable. Partner him with Mohamed El Sharbaghi, back at Louisville. That team is, I think, underrated. Oh, and Nicholas Mueller. Again, going back to the whole thing of where this league can go, getting the older players. I think Nicholas Mueller's best 8 minutes are going to be unbelievable. That team's really scary. My 3rd team, Greenwich, as you said. 4th team, I have Lake Erie, and 5th, I have Chicago. Chicago is very uncertain to me. 6, Atlanta. 7, New York Knights. 8, Newport, and last, Nashville. Nashville, all due respect to them. If you look at their roster, Yusuf Solomon's great, Noor Zaman, great, but I just don't know if those guys are going to show up, to be honest. And that's what availability is everything in this league.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think that's a good assessment of the league at the moment, especially based on rankings. But as we know in the NSL, rankings go straight out the window.
Totally.
When when the teams come together, and team management is obviously very, very important for a lot of these teams to be successful. It'll be interesting to see how things shake out here.
So I just want to mention too, before we go into a preview of the season, our takes of the season, because I have my playoffs drawn up and previewing next week's match. My favorite match of the season, I have to mention on both sides. So now transition, I have to mention it before. My favorite match of the season on the men's side, I'm most excited for, is if everyone shows up, Chicago versus Louisville. Kind of like you said, the firepower there. I think it's so evenly matched up. And it's in Louisville. Fernando Balzon's now stepped down as commissioner and has become an owner of Louisville. He gets it, and I think Louisville. It would be great to see Louisville getting in the fold. And on the women's side, DC versus Philly. Those teams. Rowan Elarbi. I hope she shows up to that match. Fireworks are going to be everywhere.
Yeah, no, I really like that Chicago-Louisville matchup. Firstly, because of the actual team rosters and, the way it could shape up as a match. But secondly, because of the history of the teams. Chicago versus Louisville was the first ever NSL match in the exhibition when we were trialing our format. Yeah. So rekindling that rivalry. They haven't been in the same group the last 2 seasons. So they haven't played last 2 seasons. This is actually their first time that they're in the same division. Yeah. I know that will be a fun one for the owners as well as the players and the rivalry. And then, but my pick for the men's side, Newport versus Greenwich. Northern rivalry. That'll be a great match.
Is that in Newport?
That is in.
Do we know?
Yes, that's in Newport.
At St. George's?
Yes. That's in Newport. Yeah, St. George's School. We know St. George's always puts up a great crowd. Their supporters are, I like to compare it to a high school football game, or a high school basketball game. That's what the environment is like in there for that match, and it should be electric. So for the men's side, that's my match of the season. And then on the women's side, I agree. Philly-DC rivalry, obviously rematch from the finals last year. Yep. A big one, a big regional rivalry. DC, Philly, very very close in geography. Yeah. And then the other women's match that I have is the Philly-New York matchup too. That'll be a great one. First women's match of this, Philly-DC is first. Or Philly New York is the first women's match of the season, but that'll be a great regional rivalry as well.
Hell yeah! All right, so let's quickly go into season predictions. Let's start with the women. Who do you have as division winners on the women's side, and who's going to win the league?
So on the women's side, for the viewers out there, quickly, obviously there's 6 teams. Two divisions of 3 teams each. So the top 2 divisions.
Top 2 teams. The
top 2 teams in each division will go through to the playoffs and play in the semifinals. Just to clear that up.
Cool.
So I think that the top 2 in each division will be the Freedom will go through.
Okay.
The Freeze will go through. DC will go through, and Sono will go through.
Okay.
So I'm sticking to my top 3 teams, and then I'm throwing Sono in there. I think Sono will come out of the fold and grind through and make it. I know that, or we all know that the finals are in Sono. So they'll have that extra motivation of trying to get represented at the finals and play on their home field. So, and then do you want me to go into the final predictions? Or do you want to give yours first?
I agree. I have all 4 teams as well.
Okay. You have the same.
I have the same exact 4. Then DC versus Sono, 1 semi, and then Seattle versus Philly in the other semi. Yep.
And for my final NSL final prediction, I think it's going to be a rematch from next year. Freedom versus DC Inferno. I think it's going to be a barn burner. And I think Freedom 2-peats this year.
It's so funny. I thought DC last year. I had DC winning. Philly won. This year, we are spot on. I have Philly winning. I just think that everyone's going to show up. I pray that's the final, because that will be so electric to watch. I know Amanda Sobey will be fired up. I know that whole DC ownership team will be fired up, and I know Sunil will be on pins and needles. I hope Olivia Weaver shows. I mean, that's the other thing. We don't see Olivia and Amanda. I don't know when was the last time they were on court together in the PSA or U.S. Nationals even.
Yeah, they haven't crossed over much, and I think that if God willing, we have all the team rosters healthy and in good shape for the finals, I think that will be an unreal matchup with the history from last year, a very tenuous final match that came down to the shootout at the end. Was the most exciting women's match of the season.
Easily.
So I think to reproduce that this season would be electric for the fans. Okay.
Now to the men's side. Give me your top 4, 3 division winners, and then your wild card. I can start with mine first if you want.
Yeah, you go ahead. I started off, so.
Yeah, okay. So I have Philadelphia going undefeated this year. I have Louisville going undefeated this year. I have Greenwich going undefeated this year. I'm assuming that team is showing up. Again, they're the lowest ranking if everyone shows up. I mean, that team is constructed to win. And then I have Cleveland, Lake Erie, making it back as the wild card.
All right. I mean, I think you're right. I think if Greenwich, can turn up and can really get up for it, they're in really good shape, which is why I have them going through as well. I have them going through as the wild card team, but I have them going through. I also have the Lightning, the Colts, and the Dragons going through.
Wow, we are so off on the Dragons. You're a little biased because that was your team.
No bias at all. No bias at all. Okay. Definitely divergent opinion.
Yep.
But
that's fine.
Nonetheless, I think that just the Dragons come together as a really good franchise. Okay. So that's why I have them.
So you have Louisville, Greenwich, Newport, Philly. Who's your finals?
So I have the Dragons playing the Lightning in the final.
Wow. And who's winning?
Dragons win.
No, my God, that is. I think I have Newport going 0-2 this year.
Wow. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing if you can prove me wrong there, but I think the Dragons just come together so well as a squad. And Pat Kosker, I mean, I got the
First-hand experience.
The chance to get coached by him last year. He's great with the players. He understands how to get them to come together and play together. Yeah. So I think that they're going to be in a really good spot, and I think that could be a Cinderella story this year. Yeah. I understand it's an unpopular opinion, but I think it could be a Cinderella story.
Well, the team chemistry is valid. Newport almost took out Philly. That was easily, I think, the best match last year was the Philly-Newport semifinal.
And that's the thing. You forget that last year, Newport was in a place to win the championship.
Yeah.
If a few points had gone differently in that semifinal, I think they win the next day against Lake Erie Beacons.
Easily. I think
so. They're strong. They're a strong roster.
Yeah,
they're a strong roster.
That Marwan versus Muhammad, 8 minutes, final 8 minutes was electric, and that could have gone.
It was the best. Anyway. One of the best moments of the season was that final 8 minutes. I mean, so exciting to see. Obviously, Muhammad and Marwan brothers going head to head. Two power plays or one power play each. Right. Still coming out even after the power plays, and then it was like 2 or 3 minutes left on the clock. They had to just play it out, and Marwan obviously took it, but. You forget that Dragons were in a position to win last season. It had a couple things gone differently. So
you're right. I will just throw out
that's how I stand.
I think it's going to be Philly versus Greenwich in the finals. I think Philly's going to win. No surprise, Philly's going to win both titles again this year.
Fair enough.
But to wrap it up, I just sort of want to put out there, the first match of the season, January 30th. Philly is traveling to Atlanta, which should be an amazing match. And then the next match is actually DC versus the New York Queens in their first match of the season. Can you give, I think I've already talked on the roster. The roster for the men's is on Atlanta, Nick Matthew, Omar Masad, Miguel Rodriguez. For Philly, it's Marwan El Sharbagi, Muhammad Abu Elgar, and Curtis Malik. The rankings are insane on that match. For DC and New York, can you just say the roster?
Yeah, so we have the New York roster submitted. We don't have. I mean, we're doing this podcast on Wednesday, so the DC hasn't yet locked in their roster.
9 days before.
But for New York, we have Fayrouz, Tesni Murphy, and Noor Hikal. So definitely a strong squad for that first match. They have their number one player. They have Tesni, who is very experienced, and Noor, who is a young, up-and-coming, fiery player. Yeah. So should be a great matchup, home court in New York. 2 days after our preseason exhibition, which we're doing actually on the glass court at Grand Central. Yeah. Really excited for that one between the New York Knights, Greenwich Panthers. Great regional rivalry there. And looking to put on a great show for the New York crowd. So,
And with that, let's kick it to our interview with new Atlanta Tornadoes member Nick Matthew. We now welcome on to the National Squash League podcast a 3-time world champion, a 20-year veteran of the PSA Tour before retiring in 2018. He was the world number 1 for 19 months. He's known as the Wolf on the PSA Tour, but in the National Squash League, he's known as the Closer. From Sheffield, England, we have Nick Matthew. Nick, how are you?
How you doing? Thanks for the new nickname.
Well, it happened. I was emceeing obviously your most recent Legends match, and the Closer. It just kind of came out of nowhere, and the NSL Social just ran with it. But to be honest. The last 2 Legends matches were unbelievable. You took out Matthias Knudsen, who was just traded for in the National Squash League, and he's sort of been treated as a premier NSL player, but you kind of just shut him out. Definitely this year, you won the last 7 points, and 2 years prior. I mean, is there something about the format that you really just thrive under, or how'd you make that happen?
I don't know. I don't know whether I'm the closer or Matthias is the choker. We'll have to we'll have to work that one out. But I'm coming in strong here. I've been told to come as a tornado, like blowing really strong. So, no, who knows? Look, I think we've been fortunate in those 2 Legends matches to have the unlimited subs. So, maybe he's still a little bit fresher than those guys at the end. Who knows? But it'll certainly be a challenge when I'm going onto the regular format in the coming weeks.
Yeah. Well, we could talk for a long time, but I know you have a Berkshire match to get to today, so we're going to try and keep it tight. So I kind of, with the National Squash League podcast, I sort of wanted to just talk about the National Squash League and when you first heard about it, and sort of what was your first reaction to the National Squash League and the format.
I've always been a big fan, of anything that's different. I actually, in high school, I did one of my sort of projects on different scoring systems in squash, kind of creating more pressure points and those like really like clutch moments in the game. So I think that's exactly what NSL does. So, I'm a big fan of different formats, getting it out to different audiences, especially something it stands totally apart from the PSA Tour, which is a really good product as well. So I think it's been a great event, and Spencer's been trying to get me to sign up here for a few years, and finally he put one too many beers down me, and he finally got me to sign on the dotted line.
Yeah, well, that's a good segue into the next question, Nick, because obviously I remember asking you to play the league after that first Legends match, and you were a bit hesitant. You're like, I don't know, this year, maybe not. And then after this Legends match, as you mentioned, you changed your mind. So what was the thing that really put you over the edge and made you want to join the actual NSL season this year?
I don't know. I guess I'm not very good at saying no. I'm always trying to please Spencer, but I guess in the heat of the moment this time, I was like, maybe the first year I thought it was a fluke, and then the second year I was like, hey, maybe there's something in this. Maybe we can play for a handful of points, and play at a good level still. But it's been fun. I thought my days of kind of getting hyped up for squash matches were kind of behind me, but it's been a lot of fun playing the NSL. I think it's very competitive, highly competitive, obviously, but there's that crucial fun element to it as well. And even if I'm in there for one season, why not? Let's give it a go. And I was conscious of kind of not taking up a spot for one of the younger players. The last thing you want to do is, as a sort of old pro, is sort of jump in there. But I think with the extra roster space, 6 spots, there's room for everyone. And what maybe us older guys can bring to the table slightly different than the younger guys, like around the matches, the social side, the clinic, that kind of promotion of the league as well. Maybe it's just a little bit different than an up and coming guy.
Absolutely. And again, before we start talking about the match and the Atlanta Tornadoes, I have to ask, and it's relevant because John White is obviously the Philadelphia Lightning coach. There's a rumor that has it at your first Legends match that you watched John White play 2 points, and then because of the unlimited substitutions rule you kicked him off personally. Is that true?
Several times.
He just wasn't up to standard.
Yeah, he was complaining that he was seizing up because I kept subbing him off too quickly. But I was like, are you seizing up, or is that your constant state, Whitey? It was difficult to establish which was which. But I also heard a rumor that Philly were wanting to sign me this year, So, but I heard that, Atlanta just got in there too quickly.
Well, I cannot confirm nor deny trade rumors. I will, maybe he was trying to move up the draft. I obviously was firsthand witness to both your Legends matches, and I was hoping that maybe none of the other owners did. But of course, Chad Hood and to be honest, a lot of the other owners saw what I saw on you. So it was unfortunate that it couldn't work out. But we'll have the pleasure of seeing each other at our first match in just 1 week from today or from Friday.
Yeah, I can't believe it's the season opener. I've really kind of signed on the dotted line here. It's coming in hot.
Right, exactly.
So Nick, just take us through your decision to join the NSL a little bit more in depth. Just curious as to, obviously you've been retired for 8 years now, but what facets of your game do you think suit the NSL format most, and what you're going to bring to that opening day match in Atlanta?
Gosh, yeah, I think experience is the big thing, right? I think that's the tagline that you put next to my name. But I think we're an experienced team. I think I presume we're getting unlimited substitutions in our team in Atlanta, right? With the lineup. No, is that not a thing? No,
nope.
I think I'm curious. I think the first time I did it, there was a lot of to and fro-in. I'm known for the length of time it takes with my warm-ups to get kind of ready for action, and probably sort of struggled a little bit towards the back end, or maybe you're kind of getting hot and cold and things like that. Whitey didn't help by having to get subbed off every 2 seconds. But I feel like we've done a couple of exhibitions as well. We did one in Hong Kong. We did one with Josh Taylor in St. James. So played sort of a handful of matches now and just started to get a little bit of the hang for it. But of course, Philly, the reigning champions, with the team that you're coming in with, that's going to be another level entirely. So although I've got a handle of the format now, it's going to be curious to see how it pans out at several levels up.
Yeah, it is an interesting thing now. Obviously, in Season 3, we have players who have played the format multiple times, and then we still have players who are new to the format and coming into the league. And so, I think what we're going to see is the players who have taken the time to play the format, play the first 2 seasons, are going to be in a good place for this season 3, having that experience. So I think you're totally right. Having played multiple times, you're going to be in a good place with that.
Mm-hmm.
I think so. I think the captains as well, it's more tactical than you think around the power plays and when you're going to rotate the subs in and, where are you saving people? And of course, you've got to think on your feet as well. You might have a plan, but I'm sure that I'm sure you've adjusted that plan several times before when you're on the sidelines. And yeah, it's fun to navigate. We've got a couple of younger guys in our squad as well. If we need them to put in some, we're going out with the old guns, in the first match, I think. But I think we've got some younger guns in our squad. If the strategy needs to be to give them to eat up some minutes with some of the younger legs.
So let's talk about that match. So you guys will have Miguel Rodriguez, Omar Masad, and yourself. And you're also coached by, I think Atlanta's actually undefeated in the regular season thus far in the NSL, coached by veteran Celia Pashley, who does know her, the NSL rules and the strategy. But can you tell us more about, one, maybe your experience with Miguel and Omar during the PSA days? Because obviously you guys are almost, colleagues in a sense that you guys played at the same time. And maybe you're definitely a little bit on the older side compared to some of the other players in this league. But do you think the fact that you guys sort of played together is going to bode well for your first match against the defending champs?
Maybe. I mean, we are veterans, definitely. I'm not sure Celia will thank you for calling her a veteran, but we definitely are. I played. Look, Miguel and Omar are probably opposite, aren't they? You've got Miguel who's wanting to sit into those longer rallies. Omar's got the renowned hammer of Thor, and I'd just be interested to figure out how maybe I'm somewhere in the middle of those two. I don't know. So we've got a good contrast there, and Omar's definitely going to want to bring that power. Miguel, I played on the same team with him in Hong Kong, and he can just, even at the level he is now, he can just frustrate and soak up the play and really eat into the clock if needed. Maybe some power plays possibly. So I know, I think there's a nice contrast there, despite our advancing years.
Well, you've got Miguel the Cannonball, Omar the Hammer, and now Nick the Closer. So, I think that's got to be the team with the 3 best nicknames on the entire NSL, no?
That's fine. Nicknames go far, but they don't get you rings, as far as I know.
You have to come up with some more creative nicknames for your team, BG. But anyway, so BG just hinted at this, but so you got Coach Celia Pashley, and then you've got a great owner as well in Chad Hood, who we had a fun FaceTime with right after you got drafted, called up Nick. And,
oh, really?
And got Chad
awesome
on FaceTime with him, and Chad was, obviously very, very excited to have you on his team. So what are your thoughts for playing for them? And what's this kind of, what are your thoughts on playing, for a team, with ownership and everything, maybe building relationships with them? And was there any feeling that you maybe would get drafted by the Tornadoes before you got drafted, or was this a big surprise for you?
Yeah, it was a big surprise. I was tuning in. I'm over here in the States at the moment, so on the right time zone, and tuned in. And yeah, he caught me in my bathrobe on FaceTime after the draft there. I was just watching, and, it was comfortable. And it certainly surprised me when I got drafted that early. When it said sort of the description, I thought that was going to be Englishman. I thought it was going to be Mohamed El Shibagi, and then it really surprised me. So I was like, well, I was thinking I might go in, round 5 or 6 if I'm lucky. So certainly got in there early. So, I want to try and repay the faith. Chad seems like a great guy, dying to meet him. I've been to Atlanta several times, and the community centre is great. Community squash down there, I think what they're trying to bring, obviously grow squash further south. And I think, like I said, one thing they established in Hong Kong is maybe us sort of former players can offer a little bit more outside of the court as well. So it's not just about the match itself, the social side, the promotion, maybe inspiring that next generation of people who've not seen squash at that level before. So I'm sure that we're going to bring a lot of different things to the table when we're in Atlanta.
Absolutely. And now, Nick, I have to say this because I was raised that if I'm going to talk smack, I have to say it to everybody's face. I've already said this to Celia, and now I need to say it to you. We were recording before, and I was trying to give one-word description of every team. And the way I describe the Atlanta Tornadoes, respectfully, of course, because it's a team full of legends, is I said geriatric. And I said that the next...
Fine. Legends is absolutely fine.
And I did say your guys' next sponsorship should be with Life Alert, if you're familiar with that commercial.
No, sorry, I've never seen that.
I'll send it to you after this. But with that in mind, I need a prediction for next week. And again, just so you know, the Philadelphia Lightning, we're trotting out Marwan El-Shorbagy, Mohamed Abu-Elgar, and Curtis Malik for our first match. It's the NSL opener, like you said. You're definitely getting thrown into the fire early. What is your prediction for the match next week?
Gosh, I think, actually in years gone by, I've coached both Mohamed and Marwan and worked with Curtis on the England team. So I've got an inside scoop into all of those guys, I'll know what they're going to play before they're going to play it. When I'm sat on the sideline, maybe not so much when I'm on the court, but I'll be able to advise well. I think that we might just sneak it on the overtime. I think it's going to be 2-2. And overtime then the experience is going to tell right at the end with home advantage.
That's it. I'm also nervous because Omar coaches Marwan, as far as I know, right now currently. I mean, I see Omar posted. So that is actually a little scary.
A lot of interesting storylines in that one, and Nick brings up a good point of having the inside scoop there, BG. So you might be in trouble. I don't know.
Oh God, Nick. Before we go and wrap it up, for you, tell us a little bit about what you're doing now, and I know you're traveling a little bit back and forth between the UK and here, and tell us if there's anything you want to promote or tell the fans about.
Oh yeah, thanks for that. I'm here in Berkshire School up in Massachusetts at the moment, working with the team there. We've got sort of into the meat of the season now with the Nationals coming up in Philly at the end of February, and New England champs, things like that. I'm also working with England Squash at the TOC next week. And then when I get home, I am working with two clubs in the UK. One is in Aberdeen in Sheffield, and then one is in Surbiton down in London. So I've kind of got a north and south set up back home for when I'm back there, and try and get some family time in amongst all of that.
Well, you're a busy guy, we know, so we really appreciate you coming on the podcast today, Nick, and thank you so much for your time, and really excited to see you out there in the opening match of the season against the Philadelphia Lightning.
Thanks, guys. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Go Lightning.
Gotta throw yourself in there.
We might
Thanks,
cut
Nick.
that.
Appreciate it, man.
Thanks, guys.
That was awesome. Good stuff.
There's so much NSL stuff to look forward to. Again, exhibition is January 29th in New York. First match, Philly Atlanta the 30th, and then DC versus New York Queens the 31st. So much to talk about. We're gonna, our next episode, we're going to summarize those matches, the exhibitions, maybe get another guest on for the interview. But until then, guys, that's all we got. So make sure you tune in on our YouTube channel at the National Squash League, and we'll look forward to seeing you around the country this year.
We say we won't get older. It'll be